career in private practice. I'd like to welcome our distinguished and diverse panelists. If you would each introduce yourselves, give a brief blurb about what you do to our audience here today.
Hi, I'm Adam Barrett. I graduated in '98. I have a private practice here on 12th and University. I see adults. I'm mostly doing individual work right now. I have specialties in PTSD. I've studied EMDR. I also do executive coaching, and I'm really honored to be here today and looking forward to answering your questions and hopefully helping you out with your curiosity about private practice. So thanks for inviting me back.
Hi, I'm Shannon Mclaughlin. I have a private practice in Jersey City. I graduated here in 2011. I just started my private practice about 9-10 months ago, and so I'm closer to your experience than these guys. So I still remember the hassles of licensing and getting your hours and all of that. Let's see, I focus on anger, grief, and some relationship issues. So most of my clients are short-term problem solving, but I do have a few that, it's more the psychodynamic attachment issues. It's good to meet you.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here today, and it's really heartwarming for me to be here in this room where many times I also sat in the same chair where you're sitting today. My name is Maria Taveras. I am bilingual, Spanish-speaking, and I'm one of the few of the class of social work of 1989. Believe it or not, even at that time, we were about 3. So I am impressed with the diversity of the faces, the men as well as the women who are here today. So thank you for the invitation. I graduated in 1989, and since that day I have promised myself that I would begin my analysis. Because during the time that I was here studying graduate work, although it was very demanding and fascinating to me, I wanted more. I come with a curiosity that it's never satisfied. It's always wanting to deepen the understanding of our experiences. And so therefore I decided to begin my analysis with the Union Institute here in New York. At the same time, while I was doing my analysis, I also was working at a clinic with psychiatric population as a way of furthering my understanding on Kernberg's work, with the work that I had learned here from Judith Mishney, who at the time was one of my teachers, and with whom, with great pleasure, I had the honor to receive a Gradiva Award the same year that she also received her Gradiva Award from the National Association for the Advancement of Psychoanalysis. Mishney was one of my professors, my dear professor, who was very gracious to me during a difficult time in my life. While I was in her class, it just happens that my grandmother had passed away, and I wasn't able to do my final paper as well as I would have. So I consulted with her, asking her, what should I do? And she suggested I just take the summer class over again. And I thought that was really good advice and deepened my understanding of that work. So it's surprising, how life turns and unexpected surprises occur. Fast forward 10 years, I applied to become a union analyst, and I entered the program, and from there I had started sculpting and painting dream images based on the dream. many surprises have taken place since then. And the fruits of my labor, my work, I bring to you today. There are 2 articles that I have written based on this process, and they're free for you. And I'm also available either by email to speak with you individually, free of charge, of course, and to visit me in my office. I am located in Midtown, New York, on 39th Street. And my specialization is in the creative imagination, for you to have the opportunity to engage with yourself and create a life, a lifestyle, a way of living that is satisfying and meaningful for you, and therefore being able to make contributions to your society, alumni, or wherever the libido is directed. And that's my specialization. I work with...
Maria, we just head on to Hillary, and then you can expand on what you do and your experiences in a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, I'm Hillary Marshak, and I can see that this is a very dated photograph. You recognize me. I did used to have brown hair. And I have a private practice as well as an egg donor agency right here on 12th and University as well, although we're on different sides of the street, Adam and I. The private practice was my 3rd career. I know you're going to address how did you come to social work, so I won't get into that, but I then kind of, it was a natural metamorphosis into doing fertility work. I just found it and loved it, and ended up opening a practice, an agency that matches egg donors and egg recipients, and it's extremely fulfilling. It's serendipity, but just so lucky when something like that happens, that you just find the thing that draws you. And I love it. I've been doing it now. I graduated in '92. My favorite professor is standing right there in the corner. Her class loved her so much they made a scholarship fund in her name. She was, and still is, probably fabulous, Alma McCartney. And I started working in a nonprofit after that, and then started my own practice. So I've been doing it for quite a number of years now.
Wonderful. Welcome, all of you. I appreciate all of your expertise. For our students who are interested in private practice, what practices, licenses, or courses are required or recommended?
Well, you have to get your LCSW.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous
You just
degree.
have to.
Really, it's a really fabulous degree. It's a very broad in scope in terms of practice. So once you graduate from the MSW, that's a great degree to get.
Shannon, can you share what the process was coming right out of the school?
Sure. I graduated in 2011, and after a few months, finally found a job that my hours counted. That's important when you guys graduate, that you find a job where you can have supervision hours that apply to the license, because there are some jobs out there that don't. And so I worked for about 3.5 years at that job, and then decided enough and started my practice. I'm still, though, to supplement my income, I still work 2 days a week at a fee-for-service agency in New Jersey. And I do their EAP, so for Bayonne City, I see their fire department and police officers for counseling. So I can do a private practice. I don't know if I could afford to live all on my own. Luckily, I have a spouse who can make sure the rent's paid. But I am definitely breaking even, and it feels like, yeah, next year it will be, I'll be banking money. Okay. But let me just say this one thing. I am so you know, when I first started the job, when I graduated, the internships were great, but I got the job and I was like, this isn't exactly what I wanted. I want to be doing, you know, one-on-one with people, and I was working at a day center. Best experience ever, because it allowed me to see a wide variety of people. So now when I sit down and a private client sits down and goes, oh, I just want to let you know I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, it doesn't like freak me out. I've had so much experience with a wide variety that I'm so grateful now that I had that experience. Don't think right out of school you should be doing something that looks just like private practice for somebody else. Try and get the breadth of experience would be my recommendation.
I completely agree with that. And I also did adult day health in my first job, where I was getting paid and good supervision and a really good breadth of work with intakes and groups and crisis intervention and doing hospitalizations. And I totally agree. You might not know what that first job looks like. And you might say to yourself, why am I here? Or you might say to yourself, this is not exactly where I want to be. And I remember multiple professors would say, this is just what we're doing here in these 2 years. I was in the regular 2-year program here. They'll say, you're just getting a starting point here. They would say that over and over again. The real learning is going to start when you leave here. It was not just, that was not trite at all. That was not just to sort of pat you on the back and send you on your way kind of a thing. It was so true. And in adult day health, I got supervised hours so that 3 years later I was able to sit for the LCSW. I did it in California. I moved to California right after I did a stint at Upper Manhattan Mental Health Center here. And set your expectations high. Find out who's going to give you proper supervision. Don't assume that a place is going to do that. Be overt about that conversation. So that's, I mean, I think you guys are here today to really learn some nuts and bolts. I mean, you're curious about our practices, but I think you're here to learn some nuts and bolts about how to do this. So be overt about that conversation. Who would be supervising me? Don't get into a situation where 1 year later you realize that the person's been signing off on your hours. Can't really sign off on your hours. So, and breadth of experience, I agree 100%, because when you do go into private practice, you want to be chilled out about who's walking into your office. At first you may not be, but you need that experience before you open your private practice.
And on that subject, may I just add that the internships that you're going to do, I know you're probably going to ask this question, I don't want to take this away. The internships that all of you do, no matter how much you think that they're going to be irrelevant to what you're interested in, or inconvenient, or horrible, or gut-wrenching, or all the negative things, they turn out to be as important as what you were talking about. They're so key to your development. You learn things that you'll use forever and ever and ever, even if it's in a quite different setting. I got hospice. I thought, oh no, I don't ever want to do this. And it's the greatest thing. I mean, I know so much about that, even all those years ago, that I not only can help my clients who are going through aging or aging parents, but my own family. It's really been a benefit.
Maria,
Yes.
is there anything you'd like to add on that subject?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with my colleagues. That is fundamental, the education that you're receiving. It gives you a really solid foundation to move forward onto your careers. I also underscore Adam's suggestion of, look around. There's a lot of choices. You have a lot of opportunities to go and get the kind of work that you want and need to further your desire. Where do you want to go next? and to get the supervision to make sure that they have the credentials that matter, that are required by New York State, so that you can then go and sit for the LCSW hence for 3 years. I did that, and I started my private practice in 1991 after working 3 years in a clinic during the daytime, but also in the evening. I also worked with Western Queens and Family Center, so I can continue to practice in Spanish, and then at the same time during the day, learning more about more severe cases. And I was fortunate that at that moment, HMOs came into being, and they wanted bilingual, therapists. So I applied, and I had a full practice. I lived off my practice. I was able to provide for myself and to establish a full practice. So, it really depends on your talents, your expertise, and how that continues to go. As you've heard, all of us do it differently. Some of us teach, I also teach, and you can break up your week by doing other kinds of work.
Well, in your job search, what strategies did you employ to decide if the culture of the organization was a good fit for you?
Are you speaking about the university or out?
No,
just
when you searched for
work?
your first job, when you left Silver, how did you tease out, is this a good organization for me? A lot of you have spoken about different things.
Well, I just needed a job. Let's get down to brass tacks here. I don't want. I think you guys, again, are here to get some brass tacks about how to proceed. I needed a job, and I went on interviews, and I wasn't right for certain things because certain jobs needed experience with younger clients than I had on my resume so far. It wasn't a good match in some cases, and then I had to make a very difficult decision between two different positions at one point. But quite honestly, I jumped in knowing that I didn't know enough to turn down that job at Upper Manhattan. And I was qualified to do that job. I knew there was going to be good supervision because I met the supervisor. And I thought to myself, as long as I know I'm going to have good supervision, meaning it happens, first of all, that it happens. Because what you'll find is someone might say, we have supervision for you, and then the person who should be offering it is actually sloppy about it. That it happens, and that there's a framework that you and that supervisor can at least agree on for the working process that you're going to do together for a time. Whether you're going to practice that way for the rest of your career or not, you want to be doing supervision with someone where you kind of jive a little bit on how you look at human beings, how you look at human beings in the environment, how can you help them with their struggles, how can you help them, and because if you don't want to be learning what that supervisor has to offer, don't take that job. So at least, even though I took a job because I needed to, I remember things. This was Upper Manhattan Mental Health Center, triple diagnosis kinds of situations, really chronic suffering, where you can't tell at the moment that you're really doing any good. But I still remember things that supervisor said. It's in my identity. It's still in my identity of how I work today. So as long as, I really feel like as long as you find that, that's an excellent basic starting point. And then if you can get along with the larger group, that's great too. But at least if you have that, I'd say go for it.
That's a good idea to do that. You'll save time later on when you're applying for your LCSW just to get that log and the signature. I would also suggest that, you know, when you're working with a supervisor, you already have a foundation from doing your internship, so you know how to write progress notes. You know today that needs to be related to whatever objectives there are. There is a structure, so you already have knowledge that's going to help you to make the decision whether or not this is the right place for me when you're looking for work. And most of, or many of the mental health organizations, you know, there is a protocol that they need to provide. So you'll be able to recognize that you're getting the best possible education and supervision during those years. So you'll be able to know that. If not, then, you know, seek work elsewhere.
Hillary, can you add?
Just quickly, it was so long ago that some of my information, like my photo, is dated. But back in the day, I was very, very, very lucky to get a job at the Fifth Avenue Center for Counseling and Psychotherapy.
I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a crazy place, but they paid $12 a session.
That was then.
But still, that's really low in 1992.
It is, comparatively speaking, that's why it's so difficult to work full service and to be able to earn enough and then have your taxes paid, you know, and health insurance. And all of this is perhaps maybe, you know, more to further the conversation about the nitty-gritty of the business of private practice, separate from, you know, the foundation in terms of clinical, theoretical, collegial
Don't get too scared.
relationships.
I was paid $40,000 a year when I moved to San Francisco, and I got my job at the Adult Day Health Center, where I was for 3 years and got all my hours. They recognized how much work I was doing. They were working off of Ryan White funding, and I went on my first day of work. It was $35,000 a year, and when I left 3 years later, I was making $45,000 a year. And now, I was supplementing that with my personal training. I was a certified personal trainer all through graduate school, and I stayed as a personal trainer until I was making real money. And that's what you have to do. Unless you've married well, or unless mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, hey, some of us, and I'm not, and there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. But just because grandma and grandpa have money does not mean that you have the experience to open your private practice on the day that you leave here. Mm-hmm. Do not make that mistake. We saw people make that mistake, and we saw them go under. We saw them flounder. We saw them break apart personally because they're not ready for it.
They didn't even have the seat, though.
No, but they were practicing under somebody else's license, getting hours in a clinic. So you really get the experience. But I interrupted you. I saw people get really scared when they heard $12.
I know.
Go on.
I do remember, it was a long time ago. That's why I tried to preface it
It's
with
like
that.
$20 now. It's not that.
Yeah, no, it's not a hell of a lot of money. But what I did, but the benefits of being at that place, on the other hand, and I did have a wealthy spouse, were that one, I was able to take advantage of the supervision, which was great supervision by the director of the clinic. And two, there were some opportunities. He had a program where it was called the Center for Cultural Diversity. And we attended meetings every week and learned so much. And, you know, I have a certificate from them, and I never would have been able to have that experience. I actually, frankly, think it was a million times better than, do you still have what's it called?
Ethnocultural.
Ethnocultural issues?
No,
They changed
drop.
the name. It's called
Drop. Diversity, racism, oppression, and privilege.
Whoa.
Yes.
That's why we have the acronym.
It is, definitely.
Well, what are some of the most surprising things, both good and bad, about your work?
I was a dancer, a professional ballet dancer until I was 25. And then I went to Hunter College. Then I went to Hunter College for my BA. Then I came here for my master's degree. And I always thought that it was about kind of putting away my first career. And everybody would point it out, and some people here knew me from Hunter, and some people knew my background, and they would always introduce me that way. And I would kind of put it away, and I would say, but I'm here now, I'm doing this now, I'm becoming a social worker, and I would emphasize that. And what's surprising to me is just how much that career, I started training when I was 6. So it was, from 6 years old to 25 years old, I was a dancer. I started working as a dancer when I was 9, as a child with American Ballet Theater. So I was actually on stage getting paid as a child, so with the company. So I was a professional at 9 years old. The surprise was that gave me a framework. That it's part of my framework. As a performing artist, I didn't realize till later, till I was out in the world doing group also get group supervision. Take a job where you know you're going to have group supervision, because you need to learn from other people's cases as well. Sorry, to dovetail from before.
An internship, if not.
And an internship on top of your job, if you're not getting it at your job. But you will end up bringing to your practice, to your social work job, and then to your private practice, you're going to end up bringing things from your life that you didn't think you were going to bring. Because as a human being working with other human beings, you will bring that, whether it's about your whether it's about your ancestors, whether it's about things that your family has gone through, things that your people have gone through, your connection to the art world, your connection to music, your connection to sports. Are you a former athlete? Are you a former gymnast? In some section of your psyche, this is going to come into your work. It did for me, and I was totally surprised by it. But it makes perfect sense. When you're in private practice, you don't get to hide behind an agency. You don't get to hide behind a job. You don't get to hide behind a job title, a working title. It's you. It's you and your patient. It's you and the couple. It's you and the group. It's you and the family. You in the room. It's different. And because of that, you will very much be finding a way of making sense out of what you did before, being a mom, being a dad, being a whatever, in my case being a ballet dancer. But it becomes part of your framework. And so I found that very surprising as I went along.
Would anyone else like to?
I have found how much I miss the old team that I worked with when I was back at the agency. I luckily am, where my office is, it's a co-working space, and there's a few therapists there, and we sort of casually talk to each other and run ideas past each other. But I really miss my old team, and occasionally we will meet here in Manhattan someplace for lunch just to check in with each other. It's kind of a group supervision experience. So it is possible to really start to feel isolated. You want to reach out as much as you can and not get stuck in your little private practice.
I think for me the most surprising thing was the realization over time that the best indicator of whether you were going to be successful with a particular client was whether you liked each other. That is it. I mean, all these things, the concepts you're learning, attachment theory, and, the empty core, and, all these kinds of, they're great. And it's really important to have some kind of framework. But bottom line, you sit in that room, and if you don't like that person, although your job is to find something to love, but if you don't click, you know, if you don't have that communality,
Which can take time.
which can take time, but not that much time. You know, I mean, I think by like 3 sessions, if you're not, or they're not liking you, and you're not feeling good about each other, it's probably not gonna work. And those are the people who
Drop out.
tend to drift away, and, you know, I'll tell them to find someone, I'll help them find someone else. I gather your experience was quite different from the way you're looking.
Mine?
You, Adam.
I think that I agree with you with what I do today. But in order to get to where I was today, those years that I did at the Adult Day Health Center and the Tenderloin in San Francisco with people who just got out of prison, and people who came to session with, you know, they had multiple disabilities, people who came to session, a lot of them had canes, a lot of them had real physical problems. And, you know, they'd be sitting there in session with their cane as though they were about to hit me with it, you know, kind of. And I just think that, you know, in time, you find some, in time, I was able to find some deep, sometimes even affectionate connection when they learned I wasn't one of the bad guys. So I think my face is revealing that I would, from this standpoint, I would say, in your private practice later, it might be different, but on your way to it, you're going to find these very difficult. You're going to find some difficulties where you really have to have faith, and I'm not talking about faith like faith in some higher power.
Yeah.
I'm talking about faith in yourself and faith in the work and faith that, because when I was there working with folks, they all had HIV or AIDS. They all had been they were all marginalized in terms of just out of prison or just off the street, or at some point had been in prison, or at some point had been on the street. They all had a serious physical medical problem, and they all had struggled with chemical addiction. 90% of them had been physically or sexually abused when they were young. And I'm like, what am I doing? Are we making any difference here? Or are we just getting tired and they're getting free lunch? Well, have faith, because you are making a difference, and they didn't all like me, and it didn't always work out. But going through that, you know, finding if you can have something, and then just recognizing what's being said here, then just recognizing, we're not going to get that close.
Yeah, just last thing, I still have a client from when I was at the Fifth Avenue Center. They allowed me to take him, even though it's against the rules. And they allowed me to take him because he was impossible. And he was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic who had been in a hospital for the criminally insane because he tried to kill someone. He is still my client today. And that's a lot of years later. And believe me, I was scared of him. It wasn't like I was vibing on, you know, wow, we're really good together, you know, or anything. But in the end, then here we are.
Well, but that's a good case because it shows the ambiguity of the experience at the moment of, you know, the expectations or fantasies of having people that you're going to work with that you like or that they like you. I mean, that's already starting off a transference. So with training, you learn to understand those experiences and hopefully work also to develop your skills about working with resistance. I have clients that had ended their work with me for various reasons. You know, and during Christmas, they send me an email and they're saying, oh, you know, how I'm thinking of you and the appreciation. So there's a different level of consciousness that you're working with whoever walks in the door. You know, it's an individual psyche, and so it takes time to develop a relationship of, you know, what's the work that you're both here to do.
It's true, Maria. On the other hand, this statement of mine is not only personal, and it is in fact backed up by research, that the most successful psychotherapy process takes place when there's a connection, and that's way more important. I mean, they did tests with like doing all different supportive psychotherapy and Jungian, psychoanalysis and
TBT.
all these different,
Yeah, the research is out there.
and that was the most important component, no matter what. So
We are human, and there is a connection. So I think that we need to be very careful about how we use the term connection, because we're human. And so I think that what Adam referred to as what influences your work on a personal level, being a ballet dancer. I was trained as a classical pianist, and so my sensitivities are very different than yours. I know that initially, people can connect on different levels initially, but if we are trained well and you're able to really take in and understand who is before you, we connect. We connect. So it's not, always so objective, this idea or feeling ego that we connect. It takes time to sort of get to know the broadness of who we are.
So as you guys can see, you gotta go through different jobs, and you gotta meet different people and have some different supervisors, because there are all these perspectives. And what you're gonna plug into, what's gonna be a good working framework for you eventually, what's gonna be a good working framework for you is gonna be developed over time, over hearing and reading all these different perspectives and experiences. One supervisor is going to be Ericksonian, and another supervisor is going to be Jungian, and another supervisor is basically going to be like a grandma with chicken soup. I swear, really. And behind closed doors, she's going to go, "Fat, just be nice." So I really think this career day thing is about like what lies ahead for you, immediately. And we can stand up here and we can talk about sort of fancier, sort of more subtle stuff that lies ahead for you. But what you're really here for today, I think, is what do I do? How do I become a private practitioner? And I do hope we have time to hear questions directly.
I think someone's
We're
already
ready
Yeah,
for
yeah.
questions and
You
answers.
have,
I was hoping the panel touched on some of the mistakes that you've seen other people make. If you could just go through sort of what you see as the primary pitfalls, mistakes not to make, things disasters you avoided, or that you would.
I have learned that through trial and error that it's really important to be very clear about what you're offering. Are you offering 24/7 DBT therapy, on the highest level? Are you willing to work with someone who's suicidal? Are you willing to work with people with eating disorders, which, are really considered by many to be the most difficult of the issues that people face and deal with? Are you willing to work with a population that there is less chance of success in the sense of seeing the kind of change that you are really working towards and hoping for? Are you willing to, you've got to are you going to see just rich neurotics? Is that what you want to do?
Who can be very interesting. It can be very fulfilling, actually.
Oh, yeah. Like me. No, I'm not anymore. I'm still neurotic. And that to me would be.
I think you raised a really important point there, because we are, a license in the state of New York, so we are there to provide a service. We need to understand our limitations and how comfortable we are in working with different disorders, because there is an ethical perspectives and also a moral position that you need to feel good about. You want to feel good about the work that you're doing. You want to know that it's making a difference and that it's significant, and it requires more training and ongoing life learning. It doesn't end, so I think that it's a good idea to sort of evaluate your talents, your feelings, what particular psychological state do you want to learn about more that you're interested in, and get some more supervision with those particular cases, whether it's a borderline, narcissistic, avoidance, whatever it may be, so that you work conjointly with your desire and then with proper supervision. That's not in a clinic, by the way. I'm suggesting that once you are in private practice, that you will continue private supervision with a different varied schooled individuals, so that you have a broader based way to make sense with your clients.
I totally
Yeah.
agree that that's a mistake that people can make. Offering something or allowing the insinuation that you're offering something that you're not actually prepared to offer. So that, I think that's really important, what they just said. And I'm going to come at that question from another angle. Notice when someone, especially right out of the gate, when you leave here and you're in your first couple of years, notice when someone's making a mistake with you. Do not be afraid to switch out of supervision. Before you're licensed, it's supervision. After you're licensed, it's consultation, just so you know the terminology.
Okay, consultation.
So do not hesitate for 1 second when you sense that your supervisor, but later it's not going to be a problem, when your supervisor is manipulating you. You will smell it, you will feel it in your gut. Sit with it for a little while, run it past people you trust, don't put up with it. It's a waste of time, it can be damaging. You don't need to set yourself up for having to do a whole bunch of psychotherapy on yourself because of the fact that somebody in a position of authority sort of manipulated you into a way of feeling about yourself that not only wasn't sort of focused on what lied ahead of you in terms of what you needed to learn, but kind of got sort of icky. You'll feel it. Don't make that mistake. So I'm coming at it from a different angle. Mistake, I think one of the things that you'll learn over time, I don't sort of look at it as a mistake, I sort of look at it as you learn. You know what, the thing of it is you have to walk through the fire. We can answer your question, but you're going to walk through the fire anyway. You're going to make mistakes. You will eventually get to the point where you'll realize no matter what the client's complaint is, no matter what they have said you've done wrong, no matter what the frustration or the accusation is, I had to get to the point where I was able to have the theories in the background, but not be so upfront with the theoretical aspect of when the patient or client is really looking for you to just say, I'm sorry, I don't know if I was off that day, I'm not sure what my face was reading to you, I want you to tell me what my face was reading, I want you to tell me more about how I was different that Thursday in October from that Tuesday in last April, because I practice in a relational framework. I don't look at it as a mistake, though. I look at it as you have to walk through that fire and you have to learn it. Don't forget the theory, because you don't want to constantly step in traps where you've got narcissistic clients who are trying to manipulate you. But you still have to be able to say, I'm so sorry. Can we talk about it? Can we talk, I'm so sorry. So I would say that's something that you learn along the way.
Something I wish I would have done differently was, in this day and age, to get a practice started, you've got to have a website. And some people are, I was given good advice, don't do therapy sites or something like that. You need your own quality website, and you need some help with the search engine optimization. What I wish I would have done was about 6 months before I started my private practice, started my website, even without a license or anything, just started the blogging, because now it's been about 9-10 months. Now people are starting to, they're not just calling me from Psychology Today, what I'm listed on. They're now finding me on the website. I'm finally on the first page, when I'm Googled. So I wish I'd started that sooner, so I'd be getting those hits up a little faster. I used counselingwise.com to help me build a website. They just specifically build websites for therapists. They were helpful, but it's expensive. I did all my own writing for the website, so it only cost me about $1,500. But if you have them write for you, it's more. But some of my friends just started with their therapy site or just a little one-page, and that worked 10 years ago. It's not working now.
I think specifically just on that note, Squarespace
Mm-hmm.
is an awesome website template that's really, I want to say yearly, it's $100 a year to maintain the HTML. Like you can make it your name, you can make it whatever,
Right.
Butterflies Therapy. And then they have templates and you can personalize it.
The danger is you're going to get lost in the minutia. The way Google works, they look at individual sites more than if you're in those kind of sites that are maintained by somebody else. I don't know much about it. That's why I went to Counseling Wise for their...
Squarespace, it comes up
It would still be
Right,
your
and
individual
psychology,
site,
yeah.
Because
It's still an individual
yes,
site,
this,
yeah.
Right.
it's just what she's referring to is a template where individuals
Right.
facilitate the
Yes, yeah.
website. But it's not, I don't believe that it's under Google, that particular website. I just wanted to say, since we're coming towards the end, that I have some business cards here, and I left, as I mentioned before, the article, so that if you have an interest or a question, just feel free to email me, and then we'll continue the conversation there.
Yeah. What are the drawbacks of having a private practice? For example, I'm not sure if this is grounded in any truth, but I've always been under the impression if you start a private practice, you can pretty much only see upper middle class, and upper class clients. And what, maybe addressing that, but also any other negative effects we might want to know before we go into.
I take insurance. I'm on a couple of panels, which means that you have to accept what they are willing to pay. They set the rates. So like Aetna, anyway, I'm not even gonna say, they really try to huddle you down, and if you negotiate, you get a little more. But even in ones that I'm not on the panel, I will submit the insurance for my client, so that they don't have to do a lot of out-of-pocket. And you have to look at their card and make sure that the policy takes out of network, and you have to do your due diligence, and it takes some time, although there are companies that will submit your billing for you if you want to pay for it. And it's a pain in the neck, but it's the way that you can avoid only seeing people who can pay out of pocket.
I avoid the pain in the neck. I look at the arc of my work as having put in so much into marginalized populations for 7-8 years of my career that I feel like I've done it. Once you get successful enough in your, from my framework, once you get successful enough in your private practice, you can keep a slot for a price range that's anything you want it to be, so that you can keep that slot open for someone who's paying you whatever they're paying you out of pocket. So an alternative, it's great that you have different people on this panel because we all do it differently. I provide a coded receipt, session code, diagnosis code, dates, all of my information. My patients handle it. You decide for yourself what works for you and what works for your personality and where you want to be focusing. And a lot of my friends help out with the processing of insurance. I actually find that I'm more in the minority, but that's the way I run my practice. But you'll notice as you go along, what am I, 14 years in? As you go along and as your fees go up and up, you have that beautiful aspect of being able to have a much lower fee spot because you can afford it.
So you have one patient once a week who we have a lower fee for, is that what you're saying?
I am open to that. The universe, we don't have time for this, and you can talk to me more later, and I've got cards here as well. The universe happens to send me people. I don't know how this works, but the mystery of the universe is, for some reason, the people who find me and the people who walk in my door can afford my full fee.
There was one more
Yeah.
question at the end. It just
Can I just ask, it's been talked about a lot, supervision, and I think you had mentioned, it's important to make sure you jive with the supervisor, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have any tips for, because usually there's just one interview, or I don't know, maybe 2 interviews, and I feel like it's really challenging to do something like that?
Will you be, if you're interviewing me, will you be supervising me or will that be somebody else? I just had another interview. So what I like to do when I'm interviewing is I like to actually meet the person I'm going to be doing supervision with because that's so important in terms of how I'm going to be doing my job here. Is that possible? They'll like that initiative. Don't be scared to do that. They'll see initiative in you and you can meet that person.
And when you do meet them, like, do you have any tips for figuring out?
What's your framework?
Okay.
But you have to know a little bit about your own framework.
Sure.
Then just ask them what their framework is, but then see if there's a meeting point too. How do they structure, what's their view of supervision? So even if they say that they're Jungian, I say go for it because you'll be learning something. They say they're relational. They say they're psychoanalytic, whatever they say. But it's an opportunity for you to learn if you get the idea that they are cognizant of how they do supervision. If someone goes, huh? Bye.
I'd like to underscore that under the New York State, there are structures already in this information that you need to document when you're doing your notes, and the supervision must focus on those objectives. So if you're working in an agency, it's not so much which school of thought there in the background there are, because that becomes, it's not necessarily part of your supervision. They wouldn't employ that unless they have already covered what's necessary to meet those regulations.
I'd like to thank our illustrious panel. I'm so sorry that thank you all for coming. I believe the panel will be here a few minutes and maybe you'll get to have a chat. And thank you for attending.
Thank you.